Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're joining us for our session, Integrating Animal Care into Human Services, the UMOM and Arizona Pet Project Model. I'm Kathy Mock, and I'll be the moderator for today's session, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Partnerships for the Arizona Pet Project. Our session today highlights the groundbreaking collaboration between UMOM Day Center and the Arizona Pet Project to keep families and their pets together during crises. UMOM is Arizona's largest shelter for single women and family, has always recognized pets as vital family members. So in partnership, both organizations provide on-site social work, tailored case management, veterinary support, and pet supplies, ensuring that both human and animal needs are met. Our panelists will talk about the challenges that sparked this initiative, its ongoing impact, and how data collection and reporting are helping to remove shelter barriers for families with pets. Our three panelists are Krista Sanchez, Meaghan Rodeck, and Leanna Taylor. A little bit about each one of them. Kristen is the program manager at the Arizona Pet Project. She has over 15 years experience in nonprofit work and has focused her work on human rights, disability advocacy, and fundraising. She has a master's degree in social justice and human rights and a psychology degree from Arizona State University. Meaghan is the vice president of strategy and people operations at UMOM New Day Centers. UMOM was founded in 1964 and is, as I said, Arizona's largest provider of emergency shelter housing and services for families experiencing homelessness. Meaghan describes herself as a utility player who loves a challenge. And our final panelist is Leanna Taylor. Leanna is the CEO of the Arizona Pet Project. She spends the majority of her time thinking about, maybe bordering on obsessing about, the intersection of social services and animal welfare. She is passionate about collaborating with thought leaders across sectors to create equity-based solutions to remove barriers to human care and prevent the unnecessary surrender of pets. So those are our three panelists. I'm just going to remind you that if you have questions during the session, make sure you put them in the Whova app on that question Q&A part, not the chat. You can do that throughout the presentation, and we'll have a little session at the end to answer as many questions as we can. So to start our session, we're going to show a video that was created to highlight the partnership between Arizona Pet Project and UMOM. We used at one of our last galas, and we thought it was best to start our discussion by hearing from an individual who experienced our partnership firsthand.
This is my cue, and of course, I'm having a... There we go. Hang on one second for me. Share my screen here. I had it queued up and it booted me out. All right, here we go.
Check it out.
The Team's Choice Award is selected by the Arizona Pet Project's dedicated social workers who do the hard work of connecting families and pets in crisis with resources, services, support, and supplies. They get together and go through their clients over the past year to nominate a family that stands out for their resilience, tenacity, and who exemplify the importance of the human-animal bond. In 2023, the Arizona Pet Project served nearly 5,000 families and pets across the state of Arizona, and one family rose to the top of our team's mind.
My name's Kristen, and then this is Presley, Irish, Talia, and then Arrow.
Kristen joined the Navy following 9/11 and served our country overseas before leaving after a traumatic sexual assault. Now, a single mother of 4 strong and smart girls, Kristen works hard to provide an excellent life for her daughters. But after moving in with a bad guy, the family suffered a setback.
He gave us about an hour to get out of the house. So we didn't have a place to go. So we first went to a hotel for like 4 days. Since I couldn't bring the pets, they stayed with him until we could kind of figure out what to do. And then UMOM put us in a shelter. But while we were there, he said, you need to come and get your animals before I shoot them or put them out in the res or put them in a shelter. I got the information from UMOM, and then I reached out. Patrick called me, and we had to go over my story. And because it was basically an emergency, we were able to get them out within the next day. Being without the animals, it was really difficult. We missed them a lot. It was missing a part of our family, so I knew we had to hurry up and do something to get them back. What animals mean to us, they make me happy. When we come home, they're really excited to see us. I think it would be empty if they weren't here or if we didn't have animals at all. It's just another part of our chaotic family.
Like some people just like leave their pets on the streets when like there's something wrong with them. But when you don't do that, and you have a happy environment for the pets, it makes you feel like since they're happy, it makes you happy too.
After 2 short weeks at UMOM with the pets in boarding, the Berry family was able to move into their brand new and safe home.
It made us really excited to finally have our own place again. We were able to have our own space, get our dogs, get the rabbit, and we could tell that they were really happy to be home with us and that they have more space to run around. So it just feels safe.
Kristen, for serving our country, bravely speaking out about your experience to help other veterans who have faced the same, raising 4 amazing daughters while working full-time as a paralegal and going to school full-time to become a social worker, and to the girls for loving their pets unconditionally and being so strong during hard times. You are our heroes.
All right. So yeah, we just really wanted to start off the presentation with that video because I think it highlights the why behind this partnership. It's one thing to talk about the what and the how, but it's the who that really matters as well. So with that, we'll let everybody on the panel get themselves together. Some of them are seeing that video actually for the first time. So we'll jump right in, and let me go ahead and just share the screen again. Give me 1 second here. Okay, perfect. So we'll get into presentation mode. All right, so integrating animal care into human services. So I'm going to start off with just a really brief history of the Arizona Pet Project because I think this journey is really important to kind of highlight where we started and where we've been, because a lot of the organizations or individuals on the call today might see themselves at some point kind of on this timeline. I know that a lot of you are in different organizations or different places in shelter intervention if you're on the animal welfare side, or different places in the human services journey of incorporating animals. So our organization was actually founded as Friends of Animal Control for Maricopa County here back in 2001. Because of the overwhelming number of animals coming into our shelters, which at the time was over 105,000 animals, of which over 70,000 were being euthanized each year, the board of directors was really visionary in sort of refocusing the mission to intervention. And at the time, that was predominantly through spay and neuter. So we did spay and neuter for about 9 years. And in 2015, I joined the organization in 2013. We had seen intake decline very significantly. We were down to about 65,000, 70,000 animals and very few litters of puppies and kittens. The question that I kept asking is, if we aren't seeing puppies and kittens, why are so many animals coming to shelters? And the answer, as many of you know, was so we realized it was a real opportunity to get involved. And with that, we hired our very first worker, placed on site at Maricopa County Animal Care and Control. And the very next year, we rebranded as the Arizona Pet Project. We did that for a few years, and then COVID hit, which of course upended almost everything in the world, and especially here in animal welfare. The shelter closed to the public and moved to an appointment-only model. And so for the first time, our staff were outside of the shelter and connecting with families in the community directly. COVID was horrible, obviously, in so many ways, but if there was one silver lining we saw come out of that, it was a really renewed understanding across the community of how important people's pets are. We saw individuals with very full lives, social, professional, having all of that stripped away. And the only thing that was left for many of them were their animals. And it reinforced what we've been saying all along, right? Many of our clients, their lives are like COVID. They're isolated, they're alone, and their animals are truly all they have. So being able to connect with people on that level, it made my job of convincing people of the importance of this work much easier. It also really highlighted for us the importance of being everywhere, right? Animal shelters are an incredibly important part of the animal welfare and human service continuum, but they're not the only one. Individuals with pets are everywhere in our community, and the vast majority of them are never going to interface with an animal shelter. And so what we realized is we needed to be in as many places as possible and as accessible to people in every way. With that, we opened our community's very first pet support center, a bilingual space in a high-need community. And very shortly after that, we hired our second and third social workers. We hired a homeless community counselor who does outreach into our unhoused and unsheltered community. In 2023, thanks to the grant from the state of Arizona, we were able to actually expand our services statewide, from operating in Maricopa County, largest geographic county, and third highest population, to operating all across the state. And we, with that, hired our fourth social worker, placed in Tucson, Arizona. This year, and I'll just reiterate, that was a one-time grant. It was a $1.5 million grant. I'll talk a little bit about how we secured that, because I think funding, of course, is something that is really interesting to a lot of organizations. And so we've been able to sustain that. That grant ended in November of 2024, and we were able to retain all of our staff. This year, we are once again going out on a limb and doing something new. We're launching a subsidiary coalition. And this is a way for us to bring together a real intersection of agencies, leaders, thought leaders, to advocate for the importance of the human-animal bond, not just at the legislative level, but within policies, internally within nonprofits, provide mentorship opportunities, create best practices for nonprofits that are looking to bring pets into their programs. So that is just a little bit about us. Again, where people can find us, we need to be everywhere. In times of crisis, individuals are reaching out in a variety of ways. So people can find us directly, either online, phone, or social media. We also receive referrals from hundreds of nonprofits across Arizona. So we've built relationships with many organizations. When they have clients in need, they can refer them to our social workers. We have our street outreach program for people experiencing homelessness. We have our door-to-door outreach program, which occurs primarily in our Spanish-speaking and undocumented communities, which have been historically quite left out of the conversation around animal welfare. We are seeing that program struggling a little bit right now just due to the fear within those communities. So it's really incumbent upon us to think about current events, how they're impacting communities, and be as responsive as possible. We can be found in 3 animal shelters in Maricopa County. Part-time, we have our social workers placed on site to help with owner surrender and intake prevention. We're at Key Campus, which is the largest shelter in Arizona for single people experiencing homelessness. We are doing a lot of work with Foundation for Senior Living, which is the largest nonprofit in Arizona serving low-income seniors. And of course, we are at UMOM full-time, and it's been such a great partnership, which you'll hear a little bit more about. What's next for us? I mean, we are absolutely looking at opportunities to partner with agencies with the hiring and placement of more social workers. We are considering the possibility and opportunity of creating a centralized social worker program that we can contract with providers across the country, perhaps. So Arizona, we expanded across Arizona, and the possibility for moving beyond Arizona is, of course, something to think about. In addition to the direct services that we provide to our nonprofit partners in our community, systems change strategy is incredibly important to this organization. And that formation of the coalition is an extension of that. So we do it in 3 ways. We, of course, support and advocate for the human-animal bond, which thankfully we are no longer one of few in the country doing that. I think just by the virtue of how many people are registered for this conference, we're seeing that momentum building everywhere, which is great. We are advocating for systemic changes. That happens both at the federal, state, and local government agency level. We are one agency in the entire state of Arizona doing work in this way. And so we need to build an army of people that are with us in that fight. In getting these systemic changes, I'm going to give you an example. So at the federal level, within the VA, they launched a program, some of you may know, a pilot program to place emotional support animals with veterans, which is really exciting. However, within the VA's own system, their policies are not. Many of those veterans who are receiving emotional support animals and support all of a sudden are seeing barriers to medical, mental health, substance use treatment, housing, behavioral health. I mean, you name it. It's really very difficult because their own internal policies allow any of their funds to support related transition, and their animal needs a vaccine and get it out. So getting hands recognized in social determinants of health. We were really successful. We had a huge win with Access, which is our state-run Medicaid funding provider, finally recognized animals, their whole person care initiative, and in the social determinants of health. They are the first one in the country to do that. And that's through the advocacy of my incredible team. And why that matters is because it opens the door for funding, for Medicaid funding to provide services for pets of people that are receiving Medicaid. So these changes are really critical in the sustainability of these types of programs. And then finally, through systems change, we are integrating pet policies and programs into our social service partners across Arizona. We definitely need a study to confirm this, but I would bet that our state has the largest number of social service providers integrating animals into their facilities and into their work. And that really is because of the support that they receive through agencies like ours and through mentorship from organizations like UMOM, who have been doing it for a long time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Meaghan to talk a little bit about UMOM.
Yeah, as you can see here, we are 61 years old. We really started very small as a street outreach organization, and it wasn't until about 1992 where we stepped into running family shelters, and 2009 where we opened the current main campus where we are today. Um, we are today Arizona's largest provider of services for families experiencing homelessness. And we focus on being a low barrier family shelter, meaning we want to get families in and helped as quickly as possible with as few restrictions as possible. Keeping in mind, though, that there are about 150 families on our campus at any given time. So safety is paramount for those families and for our service providers. And as we mentioned earlier, there was early support of pets since we opened the shelter. And we can skip to the next slide. But with that, with 150 rooms on campus and with, upwards of 250 pets at a time, and Leanna, we can go forward one. We had the desire to support those families with pets, but it was a struggle to make sure we were doing it safely, at scale. Our CMs, our case managers, are trained on human systems, and those human systems to get people safe, stable, out of homelessness are very complex. So trying to add the expertise to manage the systems to help people with pets was just not something that was plausible. And at a leadership level, we were having a lot of conversations about our aging facilities, the wear and tear that was adding on with having pets in the rooms. And there had been a continued conversation about whether we could continue to support families with pets or whether we would have to stop allowing pets on campus. And if we hop back one, yeah, exactly right there. What you see there is a refreshed courtyard and a completely renovated room that has shelter grade furniture. It has hard floors, and some of those things were selected when we thought about what was the reality of the families we were seeing. What were they coming in with? What were they needing? And making sure that we were selecting materials that would stand up over time. Yeah, I think this is going to be Leanna telling you a little bit more, but when we started talking to the Arizona Pet Project, as we mentioned, we were at our wits' end from a leadership perspective. We weren't sure what to do. It was a topic of conversation that overran a lot of meetings. Leanna had a meeting with our now COO, Monique Lopez, over margaritas. They started kind of spitballing ideas, and then they thought, why don't we try this? And we started with a grant. We started with a grant that allowed us to do proof of concept over, I think it was at about a year. And Krista, jump in, or Leanna. And we realized that the system worked.
When
And
I'm
from
in
there,
prison,
we went to building sustainability. Yeah, you lose your internet.
I know I can't unmute myself. So yeah, absolutely. I think Meaghan's right. We got a phone call from the CEO of UMOM asking if we had a chance to come and meet with him. Because they were just at a point where, I mean, wit's end. I don't think I've ever actually seen somebody in a meeting. You always hear people like tearing their hair out. I think like he tugged on his hair multiple times. The situation was really tough. They had experienced a few incidents on campus that had really shaken the staff, and they were feeling like they might need to unravel, a couple of decades of animal inclusivity on campus. So we were really motivated to make sure that didn't happen, because we know that once, that fear kind of gets out into the community, it can have a domino effect. And we might see that kind of impacting other organizations and their decisions. So around animals. So we couldn't let that happen. We needed to make sure that we were providing all of the support and resources that an organization could possibly need. So we asked for an opportunity to have a couple of follow-up meetings with them and we're able to uh, um, get them kind of talked off the ledge. And we started thinking about, okay, if referring clients to us isn't enough to really move the needle here, what is going to be a really effective partnership here? And so we started thinking about the idea of placing a social worker full time, which when it came out of my mouth sounded a little bit crazy. But fortunately, their COO is also a little bit crazy and went, you know what, this sounds great. Let's do it. So we went from an idea really into a planning mode. What would this MOU look like? What would the services that we provide accomplish? What are our shared goals here? And within 3 months, we had a full outline of this initiative and a funder. So we applied for one grant. We were able to seed that pilot program for 1 year. And be able to move that partnership forward. So Meaghan, give me 1 second here. I'm just going to I got to hop back in and get back into presenter mode here. So just bear with me for just a second. Let's see here. I apologize. It's, like I said, a little tough toggling back and forth.
And as Leanna pulls that up, I can tell you we started with that grant and that was 1 year, but we realized over time that that was a program worth persisting with. And so instead of trying to apply for specific grants year over year, we just integrated the cost of this program into our operations budget. So it's part of the cost of doing business. Because at UMOM, we focus our fundraising efforts on unrestricted operational cash whenever it's possible so that we're not trying to sort of nickel and dime and parse all of these funding sources to fit exactly what we need. And we weren't at risk of shutting the program down because we didn't get the exact grant in the exact amount.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into our presentation here and go back into presenter mode. All right, sorry, y'all. Bear with me here. Okay. So from here, I got to share screen first. This works great so long as everybody just only talks in order. Okay, here we go. Everybody see that? Good deal. Okay, we'll get back to where we were. So from formatting the initiative to the sustainability of the initiative. And I just want to take a moment to thank UMOM for that, because so often what we see when we in the community, when you have a pilot initiative, you don't find a dedicated source to continue those operations, the programs go away. So for an organization to understand that this really is a part of the business and build that into the cost of doing business, I mean, it's not common, but it really is visionary and allows continuity of services, which is exceptional. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Krista to talk a little bit about the model itself and her team's work on campus.
Yeah, so within the systems-based approach that we created in conjunction with UMOM, we really wanted to alleviate the uncertainty surrounding pets on campus and ensure a safe space for both pet families and the rest of the UMOM community. So the overarching goals were really to create guidelines that ensure safety for both pets and people, build a sustainable and duplicatable program, and allow clients to leave behind that set, in particular, in regards to their pets. This really helps them to focus on their own forward movement. On their own forward movement while in the UMOM program. Go ahead, next slide. Oh, next slide. There we go. And so what does this look like? Early communication is key. Once a UMOM caseworker is advised that an incoming family has one or more pets, they can immediately interact and notify the Arizona Pet Project social worker. This means that their needs for their pet can start being assessed before they ever step foot on campus. Excuse me. And this also allows us to educate that family on UMOM policies, as well as help them adhere to those policies. And this means that ESA designations are required for all animals that are on property. Updated vaccines are required for all animals on property. And if that animal or the animals are going to be left in the home for any amount of time by themselves, then they need to have a kennel. So our social worker can be asking them all these questions, seeing where they're at with each of those pieces. And if they do not have all of those pieces in place, then we can immediately begin leveraging our community relationships with partners like Circle the City, who also has office space on UMOM campus, and can assist with getting them those ESA letters. We can connect with vet partners like Dr. Kelly's or Heidi's Village or Alta Vista, and get the updated vaccines, or even get medical evaluations if there's medical care needed for those pets as they're entering. We do not have vets on staff, so we really rely on creating relationships with other amazing organizations that are around the valley that are already providing the services that our clients need and doing it well. Once settled on campus, the family can then stop into the dedicated space for the Arizona Pet Project, and you see the door right there. We have the office hours posted, and we also have the contact information for the social worker posted, so that in the case they're not in, that client can reach out to them via email, text, or phone. At that point, we love to have a meet and greet with them. We like them to bring the pet in. We want to see where are they at. Do they have food? Do they have... Oh, so sorry. Okay. I think I'm getting some feedback, so I'm turning that down for you guys. Do they have food? Do they have leashes? Do they have collars? Do they have litter? What are the supply needs that they have? And you can see a picture right there of basic supplies that we always have on hand. Those families can step in anytime that they need something, and we'll hand over whatever it is that they need. And if we don't have it on hand, then we'll source it for them. The Arizona Pet Project and UMOM both rely on donations coming in from the community, and all of those donations go right back into families like those that are at UMOM. We also want to make sure we're including wraparound services while they're at UMOM and in the program. So this means providing pet care throughout their entire stay. If something comes up with the pet during their stay there, they can reach out to the Arizona Pet Project social worker. We can assess the needs and then activate our vet partners if needed. And then as families are getting ready to exit the UMOM program, they are already receiving care kits that are going home with them. And these care kits will include any of the basic essentials that they need to get set up in their home, plus some extras. So we want to make sure that pet families also have all they need for the pet. So we're sending them away with pet food, with toys, with treats, or with any other supplies that they might need. At this point, we can also set them up for success providing vaccine records if they went through us for those. And also information for low-cost vets or pet food pantries, whatever it is that they might need. And then, next slide.
Okay.
So we've talked about what this looks like holistically. Let's take a peek at some of the numbers.
Let me...
I'd say I'll just start talking right there. We go. All right.
Yes, it is really We are being tested here today with this technology, people. Sneak peek. There we go.
Okay, wonderful. So let's look at the impact of the partnership. Over the last year, we have provided services to 111 unique pet families. This is not indicative of all of the pet families that have come through UMOM at this time. Some of them did not need assistance, and so they aren't included in this graph. However, with these 111 unique pet families, this resulted in over 460 different encounters with them. 391 instances of this was resource-only distribution. And what this means, that's the orange piece of the pie. What this means is that we provided food, treats, litter, leashes, collars, toys, referrals to other places, whatever it was that they needed, but it was resource or supply driven. 69 of these families, which is going to be the blue and the gray, needed medical and financial assistance to meet their pets' needs, as well as adhere to UMOM guidelines. So this includes things like vaccines, licensing, medical care. And then of those 69 families that needed medical care, 12 of them had multiple pets, and some of them up to 7.
I'm going to jump in just really quickly because one of the things that we talk a lot about when we're explaining the importance of our programs, there's the analytical, right? There's the data that you can see, and then there's the impacts of partnerships that you can't necessarily see through numbers. One of the things that we find, anybody who has kids, you know that the worst way to have a serious conversation with them, to get information out of them, is to sit across from them face to face and ask questions. The best way is like sitting in a car when you're shoulder to shoulder, or there's something in between you, or you're doing something. We find similarly with individuals in crisis who may not want to open up directly about things that they're experiencing. When we're able to talk to that individual through their animal, we develop a very different relationship with them. And so often what we find at UMOM is that people are just dropping in because it's a safe and welcoming space to talk about their animals, but then kind of through that conversation, we get a lot more information about that individual and what's going on and how they're feeling that we can then share with their case managers, with permission, of course. It really allows people to have a very different type of conversation. People want to talk about their pets, and it just opens that door. So I highly encourage individuals to think about sort of the non-data impacts of sort of these animal inclusive conversations, because I think that we can do so much more for families when we are inviting conversation through their animal, because who doesn't want to talk about that, right? Who doesn't want to talk about their pets? So I just wanted to flag that. And then Meaghan, from your perspective at UMOM, I know you had some feedback around the non-data piece of the impact.
Yeah, there were two key things for us. The first is an absence, which is we're not talking about pets at a leadership level anymore. We've stopped spending time on our leadership meetings, hemming and hawing, stressing about, wondering if the program is working. And the other thing that we find really is important from our case manager and programs perspective is that these families can now focus entirely on the progress they need to make with human services and other organizations and resources, because they are not focused on the scarcity mindset related to their pets' needs. And that's just when you have roughly 90 days in a space to kind of reset a lot of factors in your life and navigate a lot of complex systems, having that one less thing to worry about is incredibly useful.
Excellent. All right. So okay, here we go. So one of the things that we wanted to really briefly touch on with sustainability is the importance of data. And one of the things that we've found is how difficult it is in collecting animal and human related data, because human services databases don't have detailed places for animal related information. And animal welfare centric or shelter centric systems don't have the human side of the data that we need. So for us, we decided to move forward with Airtable. It gives us all the flexibility to kind of create a database that works for us. So in thinking about the collection of how you tell the story of the impact of your work, wanted to include some information for all of you to consider in your data capture. The most important piece that I want to, the two questions that are so critical is about their ability to pay rent over the next 6 months. This is indicating housing insecurity. When we talk about receiving grants from the agencies, we can connect our animal services to housing to become rehoused. The question we ask is, if you do not receive to pay for these services, more often than not, which means that they are very much at risk of eviction, homes, which costs.
Hey, Leanna, I'm just going to interrupt because you keep cutting out. I wonder if you could flip the slides off. That might help. And we have 5 minutes left too.
No. That sound better now or no? Okay. All right. Hold on. I'll turn my camera off as well. Sometimes that helps. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up.
It's better.
Better, but not great. Isn't this always the way? Okay. I will just give you the slides. So client we focus on as well. So what sort of demographic do they fall into here? And then we also capture, of course, the graph data. So just some ideas as you all are thinking about integration of data into your storytelling. And these slides, I'm sure, will be made available to the group. With that, I will stop talking and we can turn it over for 5 minutes for any
So we have a couple of questions that I'm going to try to combine. One, they are about data. So we have what are the best practices and standards of data from a person who works in the cross section of animal care and coordinator and a case manager in LA. And then some other data question is, what kind of data do you recommend to gather for a proposal to support a project like yours long term? So I think you kind of covered that already, Leanna. Anything you want to add or clarify?
Yeah, I would really just talk about the impacts on the human beings. So often in animal welfare, we get really focused on the impacts to pets and shelter. We want to make sure that when we're discussing these proposals, particularly to non-animal welfare funders, we're talking about the human barriers to care that are being removed. So just kind of strengthening that. It's hard to answer that without knowing exactly what programs or data might be available based on the work that you do. So feel free to reach out directly after. My contact information should be in the slides. And I'm happy to talk more specifically.
Another question is somebody was wondering about what are the names of some of the grants that you're able to get by focusing on the way we focus on humans and animals, or vice versa.
Yeah, so we got a $350,000 grant from the Arizona Department of Housing for eviction prevention. We get funding from the Department of Veteran Services here in Arizona, as well as the Disabled National Veterans Fund. We've received funding from Medicaid providers for removing barriers to care for people on Medicaid. There's quite a few. I know I'm missing some. But really, domestic violence, really it's telling the story. A really exciting one we just got was for seniors. And it included a gap analysis report on sort of what are services that maybe we aren't providing that seniors might need, but also making that case for ongoing support. So we're really excited about this report that is going to come out of that grant that, again, was specifically to support our low-income senior population.
There's one last question in a minute. There's somebody that actually works in 11 DV shelters in Arizona, working on the intersection of pets and DV. And her question is, they use co-sheltering, foster programs in partnership with boarding agencies. She's curious how many social service agencies are doing this or working to expand working with pets. I'm not sure we know, but
we don't. Yeah, that's why I'm saying I would really love to actually do like a statewide survey to find out, because what we're trying to do here in Arizona is build a proof of concept that can be replicated in states across the country. And I think that information is really important. We just don't have it. So, stand by, hopefully, for an answer to that question at some point in the near future. I wish I could tell you. My gut says that we're really moving, particularly in Maricopa County, quickly to the majority of organizations, including animals. I know our rural areas struggle a little bit more because they're so underfunded and under-resourced, but looking to support, our non-Maricopa County partners in that transition as quickly as possible.
We have one last question that I'm not going to ask because I think you guys already answered it, and that's from just about why is this important? I think through your presentation, I think you showed why this is important to focus on, despite including all the other needs that are social issues that are important for other organizations working on. I want to thank all three of you for presenting and for sharing the information. I think Elizabeth talked to us. All of this information will be on the website, the Lester Home website. Or not Lester Home, I'm sorry, the website, the conference website. You'll have access to it for, I think, at least 3 months. And feel free to reach out to any of the panelists for more information or connect through HUVA. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your attention and your interest in this topic.